Hi everyone, in this video I want to show a game between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi. The game was played in 2017 London Chess Classic round 8. Let's see the game. White starts with knight to f3, ready opening, but it might transpose to another opening. With this move, black invites white to play e4, entering into the Sicilian, but white continues with c3, followed by d4. d5, black places another pawn in the center, and d4 from white. C takes on d4, black releases the central tension by taking on d4, and the c file is opened for both players. And black continues with knight to c6, a developing move, controlling e5 square and attacking d4. Knight to c3, attacking d5 and controlling e4, and black continues with knight to f6. Both players follow Lasker's rule to develop knights before bishops. Next, white should develop his dark-square bishop to g5 or f4. The best square is g5, because in an opening we should develop our pieces on the most forward square in enemy camp, but white continue with bishop to f4. And black should continue his development of the light square bishop, but black played knight to h5, moving the same piece in an opening, placing the knight on the edge of the board, but with a precise purpose to attack the bishop from f4. White has three options here: to move the bishop to g5, to put it back to d2, or protect it with the queen. The last move would be a better option for white, because if queen to d2 is played, and if black takes the bishop, white recapture, and we can see that black has one piece developed while white has three pieces developed. Maybe computer evaluation is not in white's favor, but white is far ahead developed. In the game, white played bishop to d2, and black returned with his knight to f6, and white continues with e3. With this pawn move, the light square bishop can be developed, but the dark square bishop is closed. White can reactivate his dark square bishop by playing bishop to d3, followed with e4. e6, same problem for white, the dark square bishop can be developed and the light square bishop is closed. A developing move, preparing e4, and bishop to d6, preparing short castle. e4, and black takes on e4, and white recapture with the knight. And black retreats his bishop to e7. We can see that the d4 pawn is attacked twice by black with the knight and the queen, and white continue his development with short castle. Black can take the d4 pawn with the knight, but white will have a big advantage in development after. Knight takes on d4, knight takes on d4, and queen takes on d4. White can play bishop to c3, attacking the queen, and after the queen moves to b6, white plays queen to f3, and he finished his opening. His king is saved, rooks are connected, and all the other minor pieces are developed. Short castle. Black only needs to develop his light square bishop and his opening is done. But white can start an attack with knight takes on f6 check, and here black can recapture in two ways, with the bishop and with the pawn. If black takes with the pawn, this is a blunder, and white can give mate in 4 moves, starting with queen to g4 check, king to h8, and queen to e4, and mate on h7 is unstoppable. If black takes with the bishop, white can take on f6, creating double pawns, for black on the f file, and queen takes on f6. And we can see that black king is exposed. White has to bring his rook on the e file and then put it on the third rank and deliver mate on g3. That's why in the game, after castle, black castled. Black king is saved, and white played queen to c2, finishing his opening. The king is safe, rooks are connected, and all the minor pieces are developed. In this position, white threatens to take on f6 and then take the pawn from h7. That's why black played h6, preventing white threat. This move controls the g5 square, and white replied with rook ad1, bringing his last piece into the game. The rook is on the same file with black queen. Black continued with bishop to d7, another developing move. Black needs to move his queen somewhere and his opening is done. a3 from white, controlling b4 square, not allowing black knight to jump to b4 or the bishop. Rook to c8, placing the rook on the same file with white queen, threatening. Knight takes on d4. Knight to c3, black threat is cancelled, but white brought his knight back. Another way was to put the queen on b1, and black continued with a6, controlling b5. And white replied with queen to c1. In some lines, white threatens to take on h6. For example, let's make a random move b5, and white can take on h6, g takes on h6, queen takes on h6, and white threatens knight to g5 and knight to e4, removing the defender from f6 and then delivering mate on h7. In the game, black played rook to e8. This move frees the f8 square for the bishop to protect the g7 pawn. Also, we can notice that the pawn from f7 is a weak backward pawn. White played rook fe1, but in this position, if we come back, white could not take on a6 now. This move is not correct now, because after bishop takes on h6, g takes on h6, queen takes on h6, and bishop to f8, and the queen has to retreat, and the attack is gone. After queen to h4 and bishop to g7, black stands better in this position. So in the game, white continue with rook fe1, and black replied with bishop to f8, protecting g7, and white improved the position of his dark square bishop to f4. So bishop to f4 and b5. Black expands on the queen side and threatens to play b4, creating some weaknesses here. Queen to d2, the queen gets out of the c file and black pushes b4. White takes and black recaptured with the knight, attacking the bishop. And white replied with knight to e5, placing the knight on a central position, but it was better to save the bishop and by placing it to the b1, controlling the b1 h7 diagonal. So black took on d3 and white recaptured with the queen. In this position, black pushed a5, trying to get rid of his weaknesses. Another way was to improve the position of his bishop from d7 by playing bishop to b5, attacking the queen. And here white replied with queen to f3. The knight from e5 and the queen are looking at the weak pawn from f7. 7, and black plays bishop to b4. Black threatens to take the knight from c3, and if white takes with the b pawn, he will have a passed pawn on the a file. The drawback of this move is that g7 is weak, and white replied with rook to e3, defending the knight, and looks to move along the third rank. There was another option for white, to give a piece for 3 pawns and inflict black some weaknesses. That move was bishop takes on h6. After g takes on h6, knight to e4, and if the bishop takes the rook, black wins with knight to f6 check, king to f8, knight f takes on d7 check, king to e7, and d5 threatening d6 mate, and if black takes on d5, white delivers mate with queen to f6. So let's go back to the game, where white played rook to e3, and after this move black took the knight with the bishop, and white recaptured with the pawn. Black has a passed pawn on the a file. Maybe white should have taken with the rook. Anyhow, white has also a passed pawn on the c file. Bishop to a4, attacking the rook, and the rook goes to the a file, attacking the bishop and the pawn. The drawback of this move is that the c2 square is unprotected and available for the bishop to go and redeploy on the b1 h7 diagonal. And in this position, black played bishop to c2, and white continues with h3, controlling g4, and might continue with g5. But white could have played directly h4 and g4, continue with g5, bishop to f5, and white gains the tempo by kicking the bishop one more time with g4, bishop to a7, and c4. The pawn is protected by the knight. Another way to continue was to attack with g5 to destroy black defense. The drawback of this move is that the d4 pawn is unprotected. And here black replied with knight to d7, trying to kick the knight from e5. Better was to take the material from d4. So knight to d7, and white continues with knight to c6, attacking the queen and the pawn from a5. Another way was to push the c5 passed pawn. Queen to f6, the queen moves from the attack, and white takes the black passed pawns, and black next is attacking the pawn from c4 twice with the knight and the rook. White can defend the pawn one more time with rook to c1, but black can take the pawn with the queen and attacking c4 one more time. That's why white pushed c5, but this is a free pawn, because the queen from f6 looks at the free rook from a1, giving a check, picking up the knight from a5. So rook takes on c5, and white took the rook, and black takes the rook with check, king moves to h2, queen to a5, and black is a piece up, but white can capture the knight from b6 with the pawn. But in the game, white played queen to c6. This move attacks the rook from e8, but overlooked that black can defend the rook with queen to a4 and in the same time attacking the bishop from f4. So queen to a4 and white is forced to exchange queens. So queen takes on a4, knight takes on a4, and also the knight is attacking the pawn from c5. c6, the pawn is pushed, and black played knight to b6, controlling c8. This pass pawn has no support, and black controls c8 two times with the knight and the rook. f6, trying to push e5, blocking the dark square bishop, and the knight is attacked by the rook. And after this move, Carlsen resigned. Maybe too early. He's a piece down, but he could have tried to defend this position. In the interview after the game, Jan mentioned that Carlsen was sick and he wasn't feeling too good. So I hope that you learned something from this game. Please watch other games from my channel, and if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.